Hi, today is May the 4th. It is a beautiful day outside in Ohio, and I'm sitting in my bedroom recording a video about Dark Souls. Why? Well, firstly, not much of a Star Wars fan. And secondly, I don't really know. Maybe some eldritch god climbed into my ear and infected my brain with this immediate compelling to need to make a video about Dark Souls, as if there isn't enough already on the internet. Okay, that's not entirely true. I finished up a big commission a couple days ago, had a few days off from work, decided to play some video games, decided to watch some old Dark Souls content. I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like I've been obsessed with someone, and I want to write them a letter or send them a bomb in the mail so that the whole world knows how much I love this person. Except it's a video game and Miyazaki. So obviously this is a departure from my normal content, right? I mostly use my YouTube channel as kind of a archive of fursuits that I make and armor that I make. Oh, come on, get off of here. Okay, we'll do it like this for a minute. So, I've never made a commentary video. Why am I doing it? I have a crappy snowball mic and a really bad webcam. Again, I don't really know. This isn't because I'm trying to make some masterpiece. I just love these games so much, and I have to just tell everybody, or even just tell myself. Maybe this is just for 40 years down the road, when I'm dementia riddled from all the lead solder that I've been breathing for years. I can look back onto this video and remember why I like these games and the moments that I liked from them. And maybe that's why I'm doing the video. It's not to reiterate on the same points that everybody else has made, because most of us understand why these games are great if we've played them. We all kind of get it. But I want to go over my personal experiences with, when it clicked, right? Those moments where everything lined up really well, and I just had some of the best gaming experiences of my life. And I'm not a big gamer anymore. I'm a full-time suit maker. It takes up 70 hours a week. So when I do play games, I want to make sure that I'm not just wasting a lot of time. I used to play World of Warcraft, okay, but I was always a casual. I never never got the tier gear, never got all the purple stuff. I kind of played the game up to that point, and then once I realized the amount of just chores I had to do with it, I was like, I don't have the time for this. And that was even when I was 15, 16, and now I'm 28, so I really don't have the time to just pile away on an MMO like that. So I stick to mostly indie games, games that are shorter, that don't waste your time, okay? So for approaching a big game like a Souls game, right, kind of daunting, okay? I'm going to start talking about my first exposure to Dark Souls.
Hey, ignore past idiot for a second, because current idiot is here to tell you there are minor spoilers for all of the Souls games in this video. They're very small, like items and the existence of some bosses or places, but if you have a problem with that, now's your warning.
It was sometime around 2016, and it was mostly word of mouth. One of my friends told me they were in the cult. They were obsessed with this game. They demanded that I played it at a party, and I did. I got past the Asylum Demon, and then I got to Firelink, and the big mistake they made, okay, I went right for the bone zone, and that's when I started to get pissed off. I died several times there, and everybody said the game was so hard, right? So I assumed, well, this is just the way the game is. It's really hard, and obviously it's too hard for me. And I really wish at the time my friend had just told me, hey, just go the other way, because the way up to the Undead Burg is kind of a narrow sort of path, and I just didn't notice it the first time. And I had gotten so used to other games where if it's somewhere you're not supposed to be yet, they just won't let you go there, and I had gotten so used to that with modern video games that I was like, well, this is obviously I should be here. This is the path to go forward. And if he had just told me that there was a branching path, I probably would have kept going and gotten way into it like at that point. But I didn't. From that point on, for the next like 2 years, I just floundered and didn't even look at it or think about it at all. It wasn't until someone I started dating demanded that I gave it a second go. And this time around, this is when it really stuck, but it wasn't without growing pains. There's so much difference with these games than like a regular RPG that I was used to, Oblivion, Skyrim, Diablo, all this sort of stuff. You're used to they all use the same conventions, like you have mana potions and then like healing potions. The way the weapons work, the way the armor works, it's all like you can infer what it's gonna be like because most other fantasy RPGs like have the same type of items and stuff, right? But Dark Souls wasn't like that. You would get items that are just like, what is this weird thing? I mean, the Estus flask is a potion, sure, that's kind of obvious after a while, but the cryptic nature of like getting weird items that you just can't use at all because you have to have a higher spec for it, or having like moss be your like poison cure is really weird. Firekeeper souls and like all sorts of souls for like every type of thing ever. Like you're used to gold being your currency, right, and experience being a separate thing, and just like having everything be souls in these games and having it share between experience and items, it just like my brain just didn't want to accept it at first. Like it just felt so weird and wrong and like kind of silly. But I guess that's part of the first thing that's good about it, right? If you go into a game where you already kind of know what everything is just by looking at it, you don't really have to think that much about what this stuff is, right? Whereas with Souls games, and unless you've played previous games and you kind of know how they work, if you're looking to like fully invest yourself into these games and you take the time to actually look at what all of the items do and how they interact, oh, I got this new item, what are its stats like, having all the items be kind of cryptic and non-standard from a typical fantasy RPG, I think adds to the experience if you're fully invested in it, because it forces you to actually research what these things do and actually like read the item descriptions and stuff. And these are things that seem like chores to a lot of modern gamers. I mean, like people will just like skip cutscenes in games or like not even talk to NPCs and shit. And I've personally always done that in RPGs or even like action RPGs where the RPG part is kind of secondary to the action, right? I still like to like talk to everybody and listen to all the dialogue and stuff because it's like the characters are in a lot of ways what makes the games. I mean, every character from Dark Souls is like there's countless pages of fan art of them, and they might have like 20 or 30 lines of dialogue, but the game is like you want to ask them questions because they can actually help you in the game because it's so demanding. So in the process, you actually feel like they're your friends because they're actually going to help you. You can summon them and stuff. Like they're your bros. Okay, got a little off tangent with that one. Back to my own story. So 2016, played it up to the skeletons, didn't like it. They whooped my ass. I thought that was the difficulty of the game. Thought it was too much for me. And once I started dating someone, they demanded I played it again, and it took a lot of growing pains, but eventually I finally got it. Like, everything down to the item descriptions I just went over, and also the button layout. Like, for someone who played, like, older RPGs, you're used to, like, the square button, or, the left button on the D-pad usually being your sword button. The top triggers, those are for shooters, right? They're called triggers because they're for guns, but just having to switch that around in my brain too was really hard. Just, everything about Souls games is different than regular RPGs, but like vastly improved upon, in my opinion, for action RPGs. And like now that the trigger thing, I've gotten used to it. You got right hand, right triggers, left hand, left triggers. You could even put swords in the other hands if you want. You do whatever the hell you want. It's genius actually, and it's like my mom's boyfriend is used to old RPGs, and I tried to get him to play Dark Souls a while back, and he had the same problem. He wanted to switch it to the square button, and I'm like, you really should keep it on the triggers because you have a heavy and a light attack. So what's your heavy attack gonna be? Triangle? Well, you can't press the triggers while you're doing the like you can't roll while you're swinging, like because that uses the same finger. So just the way they have it in the game default is like perfect in my opinion. Now I will admit my first experience actually getting through the game was a little bit rough for the first half because my girlfriend at the time had forgotten that Firekeeper souls can be used to increase your overall health, and that you could just use humanity to raise the Estus you get at Bonfire. She thought Firekeeper souls were to raise Bonfire Estus, so I went all the way up to Ornstein and Smo just having 5 Estus on every bonfire. But what blows my mind is what was hard about it is not what you would expect at all, because by the time I reached Ornstein and Smo, I had like learned the game and it got so much easier from there. I think, yeah, sure, the second half of the first Dark Souls is, most people would call it unfinished or unpolished. But I think it's also because for a new player, by the time you get to Ornstein and Smo, you've gotten things figured out, and you're gonna plow through the second half a lot faster than the first. The first roadblock, other than the skeletons, was the 2 gargoyles, and I must have died to them probably 100 times. It just the walk to get there, having to go through the dudes that parry you, that hadn't really clicked yet. The fact that you're dealing with 2 of them and you're trying to kite them around with their fire breath and stuff. I died to them so much, and I was using a 5S to spawn fire to do this. I didn't know about summons, but even that far in, it still hadn't clicked yet. You know the saying, nothing comes easy? Well, that doesn't just apply to like your job and like work and stuff. This applies to everything in life, even relaxing playing video games. Okay, like yeah, I'm blowing this out of proportion here. I'm saying that the philosophy of Dark Souls is the philosophy of your whole life, your whole existence, and that playing Dark Souls will make you a better person overall and make you persevere more. Yeah, I'm really going for it. I think that there is something missing with a lot of people. Even a lot of people that I know, even myself to extent in periods where we just kind of lose the plot, but the plot of ourselves, Modern society has this way of just having us do the same thing over and over and over again because society has to act like a well-oiled machine, and you being a cog in that machine means that your only purpose is to kind of do one thing really good and do it over and over again. But for pretty much everybody, that has diminishing returns, and before long enough, we really want to do something else, something that we can actually feel a sense of achievement from. And there's this joke about people who they work a hard job all day, and then they come home and they play some really stressful game that just keeps stressing them out, and people act like that's a bad thing somehow, but it's not. Your brain is not like your body, okay? Like if you've been standing on your feet for 8 days at McDonald's, like yeah, you're gonna want to come home and sit down, but just because you had a stressful day at work doesn't mean that your body is so fatigued you can't come home and have a stressful Dark Souls experience or other video game experience. Like we like strife. We like challenges. I mean, if you're not being challenged or doing something that is actively making you think, for me, I'm sleeping. If I'm not doing something that's pushing me, I'm sleeping. Like, no offense to most middle-class Americans, but my idea of a vacation is not just laying on a beach and, like, getting drunk, because, I don't know, that would just get really old really quick. Like, okay, I'm laying in the sun, and I feel kind of good. This is the life. This only lasts for 5 days, and I'm paying $2,000 for it. We got off topic again. Point is, I think that it's okay to constantly be pushing yourself and doing challenging things, even outside of your professional life. I think every part of your life should be that. And as long as you get enough sleep, you'll be fine. I promise you. When you're not constantly pushing the limit and trying new things, time tends to just pass you by. Like, there's some integrated circuits in our brains where if we do the same thing every day, our brains just decide, well, I don't need to remember any of this. It's the same thing I did yesterday. Nothing new happened. So it's not about how fast time is actually going. It's about how fast you think it's going, looking back on memories of it. So you have to make a conscious effort, as hard as it is, to just always try to do something new. Something that just, like, actually works its way into your brain every day, to, like, establish every day as like a full chapter, like a checkpoint. And there's been a lot of video games that I've played that don't do this. I'm okay. I forgot everything a couple days later. I don't know what anybody's names in the game were. I don't care. But you all know that Souls games are different. You know why they are different. You know the feeling of playing a new Souls game, not knowing what to expect, and, like, truly feeling like you're on an adventure. It doesn't feel like you're playing a video game, because, like, there's this idea with video games that it's a power fantasy, and it's separate from reality, and you can just kind of do whatever you want. It's a sandbox. You're God. You're in control of this whole thing. That's not the way it is in Souls games. It's like the game, you almost feel like the game exists separate from you. Like, everything in the world of the game is its own thing, and it doesn't matter if you're there or not. You're just kind of walking through it and experiencing it and checking it out. You're literally a dude in the world, versus a power fantasy game where everything revolves around you, and it's like, yeah, of course it does, because, like, everything in your game is being run on my computer, because it's just a game. Like, this isn't real. But, like, with Dark Souls, like, you feel you are your character more than any other game I've ever played. So back to my personal story. I had beaten the gargoyles. I'd only done everything on the top. I hadn't gone down to Blighttown or done any of that stuff yet. But after being the gargoyles, this is where things slowly, all of my skills started to kind of lock in. The game was getting figured out. Blighttown, everybody told me, was a mess. You know, it's a really hard part of the game. There's flying mosquitoes everywhere. It's really laggy. And for the first time, instead of just not wanting to do it because everybody said it was hard, I thought to myself, okay, I've gotten this far, and everybody's saying that this next part is worse. I am excited for this. I'm excited for this challenge. And by the time I had gotten through Blighttown and gotten to Quelaag, things were really starting to click. The drugs had kicked in. And here is my click moment for the game coming up. Any Dark Souls fan you talk to, they had a moment like this where it clicked. Here is my personal moment. I kept getting my butt kicked by Quelaag because she has the lava that spouts everywhere. There's a lot of the AoE stuff. Her big flame sword has a lot of reach. It's like a polearm that sticks out, so the range is really far. And I just felt like I wouldn't be able to get past her. But then I noticed in my inventory, there's the Dragon Crest shield. And the Dragon Crest shield said it had 100% fire block. And I was like, well, if that's real, I mean, she has a flame sword, so it'll probably block that, right? And I put the shield on, and I beat her first time. And this taught me something very important. This taught me that Dark Souls wasn't an action game like wearing the fake skin of an RPG. This told me that Dark Souls was like a true RPG that just also had really good action elements to it. And that was huge for me, because in so many other role-playing games, beat 'em ups, Diablo, like I said, Dark Alliance, play all those old PS2 games, or even like Warcraft, right? Anytime you got a new piece of armor or some new gear, it didn't really feel that impactful, right? Like you could get a new chest piece or a new sword, and all it does is just make number go up. It doesn't do like anything tangible that would really turn the tides of battle in your favor that significantly. Castlevania Symphony of the Night, that's my favorite game of all time, and as much as I love it, there is a whole lot of items in that game that are just completely useless. All of the poison resists and fire resists and potions and all the single-use items, like, by the time you're halfway through the game, none of those have any purpose. Like, they put them all in there, and they didn't balance anything. And as a result, the game just becomes a power fantasy by the end. But with Souls games, with how hard they are, you actually have an incentive to try to use anything you can to your advantage. And you'll actually find that using the items that, decrease status effects or give you resistances to stuff, they really work. They actually do stuff. Just equipping this shield completely changed the whole battle. Not only can you feel the weight of your character and feel how every attack actually counts, and how every dodge actually counts, and how every block actually counts. You feel how your build and the items you have all directly and immediately affect your chances of beating bosses and playing the game. It's awesome. So from that point on, I was in. Rang the second bell, went through Sen's Fortress. Sen's Fortress was another one that everybody said was the brutal turning point, right? Major difficulty spike. And sure, it was challenging, but by this point, I understood the complexities of the game enough to where, yeah, Sen's Fortress was challenging, but I didn't hit that point where I was like so frustrated after like 30 attempts that I had to stop playing for a day and come back to it later. Because when you get really, really mad with the boss and you're really deep into it, it's better to just stop and come back tomorrow, because you start making other mistakes because you're just pissed off. Yeah, well, I was to a point where that wasn't happening anymore. Like, and that golden spot right there where you're almost pissing people off enough to where they want to quit for the day, but just enough to where like the achievements feel really, really good. That is peak. And finding this sweet spot, it's personal to each player, right? It's personal to your skill level. The game has one starting difficulty without New Game Plus and stuff, right? All the games are like that, which is the way they should be. But what this means is that once you've gotten good at one Souls game, the other games have other mechanics, but in general, the rolling and the combat, the melee combat, is all pretty similar. And once you get really good at these games, you're not in that sweet zone anymore. So now we gotta talk about Elden Ring, okay? I love Elden Ring. Of course I do. I mean, what kind of scrub wouldn't like this masterpiece of a game? But I know I'm not the only one that feels like it's maybe just a little bit easier than the other Souls games. Now, granted, I'm not actually done with Elden Ring, but I am most of the way done. I think I'm like level 120. The only place I haven't been yet is like the ice area. I'm most of the way through the game, so I think I can speak pretty objectively on this. It's easier, okay? Anybody that tells you it's not, I mean, I don't know, maybe the last few bosses are just, there's a huge difficulty spike that I haven't seen yet. I mean, I'll eat my words when I finish the game, but I do think it is easier than other Souls games. And I don't really think that's because the enemies just like have less health or the game is worse in any way. I think it's fantastic. I think it's just because they put so much stuff in the game, and it's real when every new variable you add to a game is something else you have to add to your formula and balance the whole formula out with it. And people find exploits and bugs, and that is people like finding flaws in the formula, right? So I don't blame them for having multiple ways to exploit the game or make it significantly easier for yourself. It's still an amazingly fun experience, but coming from other Souls games where those exploits got you to where like you could do it, right? With this, it makes it more of just a cakewalk than anything. Especially with like mini bosses. I mean, I can't tell you how many mini bosses were just like an absolute breeze. Maybe I have a habit of leveling more because I just like to explore like every part of the world. So, like I said, I'm level 130 and I haven't even like been to any of the ice areas yet or fought like any of the final bosses. So maybe that's just on me for over leveling. But I mean, I also don't use magic. I understand people who use magic, especially in Elden Ring. There's a ton of spells and it's like super cool, and I love all the graphics and stuff. The magic is very clever and very dynamic and interesting. And I usually don't use spells in Souls games. I know for a fact that using spells in Dark Souls 1 makes the game a cakewalk. It's easy mode, okay? I don't know if Elden Ring is the same way. I've heard that it is quite a bit harder and a little more balanced because you have to do like mind and intellect and whatever other faith or arcane that you want to deal with. So like yeah, you have to put points into more stuff, so it is a little more balanced. But I still think that probably the most hard, by only a small margin, but still the most hard way to play Souls games is just by rolling around and trying to poke dudes in the shins. And that's the most purest way to do it, and for me, it's always been the most fun. When I do a caster, I mean, sure, you get to roll around and dodge projectiles and stuff, but there's just something so perfect about just running as fast as you can and like barely dodging stuff, and then going in for a little poke and doing it all over again. So kind of unrelated to the difficulty, but I just want to talk about the progression and the contents of the game as I played through Elden Ring. And I'm going to say something that might piss some people off, but I mean, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people are going to agree with me. Limgrave is kind of boring. I mean, boring in a relative sense. It's still way more interesting than like any other AAA action RPGs coming out nowadays. But I found myself walking around Limgrave, hugging the edges and just trying to really explore everything that area had to offer before fighting the area bosses, Morgott and Urgot and Rai, whatever their names are. Godric, that's it. And where in a game that would be made by a company that traditionally focuses on like open world RPGs, and there's usually a lot more stuff, Elden Ring definitely had that in like localized areas, but there was a lot of like corners of the map that you could go to that just had like nothing in them. And it's kind of a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing in a sense that it makes the whole world feel like more realistic, right? Like, I mean, okay, there's gonna be a place where there's just nothing, like in the corner of some island or shelf somewhere where there's just a bunch of grass. Fine, like you would expect that. It makes things feel a little bit like it's not all just there for you to be a picking party. But I did waste like a good hour or so during my Limgrave exploration just getting essentially nowhere and hugging walls and trying to find something in areas where there wasn't anything. This is probably just a result of FromSoft, making mostly linear games and being really, really good at that. So I think maybe they made Limgrave first, and that's when the team was like the least experienced with making like open world areas. But they got better at it. They got way better at it because with how like I wasn't like done with the game. It wasn't that bad, but I was just thinking like, this is a little more empty than I thought, right? With Limgrave. And then after I after I beat the area bosses, Godric and Morgott. After I started exploring the castle, the area castle, uh, oh yeah, this is where they shine, because it's this tight knit castle. It's kind of linear in its design. It's mostly linear in its design. There's some branching paths, but it just feels like Dark Souls 3. It just feels like I'm playing Dark Souls 3. It's great. I was absolutely loving it. And I was really worried that once I got out of the castle and I got to the next area, because I can see there's all this on the map, and I know there's going to be a lot more, but is it just going to be like kind of empty open world with like a few pockets of like interesting linear actual from soft stuff to do? No, it wasn't. When I stepped foot into the Liurnia of the lake and saw not only how beautiful it was, but how much stuff there was, and how every little pocket had some new little group of some new type of enemy you'd never seen before, and all these valleys and like multiple poison swamps underground under like other poison swamps underneath like big floating castles, and like things connected to other things by like big chains and walkways, and just oof, that was where it got good for me. Because one thing I really love about Dark Souls 1, and 3 to an extent, not 2 as much, but 1 and 3, is how vertical they are. And I'm not talking about like the game design or the progression. I'm talking about like the literal map is vertical. You can look at a map of DS1 and see that there's like the areas that you can see far off in the distance are like actually there on the map, and they almost perfectly match up. There's even a spot in Tomb of Giants where they made a little fake Lost Xylith that you can see from the Tomb of Giants. And even though they're not right next to each other, they are like very close to each other on the actual collision map. So it all syncs up perfectly, and you can go to the toppest peaks of the towers and down to the bottom depths of hell. And you know what game that reminds me of? That's my favorite game of all time, is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And even Dark Souls 3 has that to an extent. I mean, when you walk out of Lothric Castle after beating first boss, you fly down to the little like witchy encampment there, and you can see like Farron Lake and all that stuff underneath, and they did the DS3 thing. Dark Souls 2, well, it's sure there's a lot of areas, but the whole game feels like really kind of spread out, and you can't see far off vantages, and you don't make that connection as much that like everything is all here in the same world. I think the one exception to that would be the well that you fall down to go like way down to the depths to fight the Rotten and stuff. That was pretty cool. So yeah, Limgrave felt kinda like a unfinished or maybe a little amateur open world sort of area, but Liurnia totally flipped that on its head, and From Software really showed that they could do this open world thing just as well as they can do any other parts of an action RPG. The verticality again for me was huge, especially with the castle, Karina's castle. Sorry, it's a academy where a bunch of college students snort crystals and blow spells up each other's asses. Can you tell I don't level intellect? But yeah, Liurnia was the start of showing me how amazing their open world design was, and from there on it just kept getting better. Going down the elevator to see the whole underground and find out that there's like almost a whole second area down there. I mean, sure, it's, spread apart and kind of sparse, but they took all of their best linear map making design and like put it down there too. They're like, oh, we can have tunnels and have the tunnels connect, and then even though it's open world, it's still going to be like linear because you have to go through the tunnels in a certain way. So it works out perfectly. And that got me thinking about another great experience from Elden Ring with Blythe. Not that kind of experience. I know the kind of people that sub to my channel, because I got to Elden Ring late, right? Came out probably like 8 months before I finally got a chance to play it. So by that point, everybody had already figured everything out. Everybody already knew what to do. They knew where all the characters were. So I knew that Blythe was in the game, but I didn't know where he was. I didn't know like how to do any of his quest stuff, and I was familiar with how much effort you have to put in to actually get plot and like character stuff to happen in these games. And I really wanted to do that with Blythe. That I didn't want to like fuck it up. But I didn't want to look up guides unless I absolutely had to. And the only person that I really wanted to see was Blythe, but I figured I would just try to play the game naturally and just see if he comes up, see if I find him somehow. And kinda. Because I'm sure you guys know when you're walking through the forest that he's in, you can hear a howl. And I heard the howl. Now, there are just regular wolves dotted around the forest in the game, so I thought that it was just one of those groups, but it kept happening, and it seemed more significant. The game was doing a very good job of, telling me that, hey, something's going on here. And I spent like 15 minutes looking around, trying to investigate where he was. And eventually, I looked up, and there he was. It was great. But how do you get him down? This is so cool. Like, what do you do to get him down? And I was going to look it up, but I was playing online, and there were a bunch of people all around that were doing the click. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Where do I get the click? And I will admit, this was the point that I did have to go and actually use a guide. But there's 3 steps there to be able to find this character. You have to hear them, recognize they're there. You have to know that you use the click, and then you have to go actually get the click. And the game succeeded in like naturally getting me almost all the way there, which is pretty cool. So I have to commend it for that. But I really think that is the best way to play any Souls game, is to just try to wing it and try to just figure things out on your own, especially if you're online. Like, other people are going to be giving you hints and cryptic context clues through the messages they send. I mean, there's a reason why the messages in the game are restricted to certain words and sentences, because it's supposed to be cryptic. It's like everything's supposed to be like a riddle that you have to like use your brain for to figure out. And when you do successfully do that and you go looking for it, it's really fun. And this is a big delineation between the whole get good crowd, because as someone who didn't play these games, I went in with the impression that when people said get good, what they meant was, oh, well, you just have to get good at the controls and like timing and like dodging and stuff. Like, this was basically in the same league as a racing game or a fighting game. Like, you just have to get really good at the controls and having fast reflexes and stuff. But that's half of it. But the other half that is present in every Souls game is the RPG aspect, where if you just take the time to figure out what the items do and what the characters do, and actually get involved in the plot and not kill NPCs and actually like be a part of the world, then you can supplement your bad reflexes and get through any of these games just fine. And that's why Souls games are so fulfilling and so unlike any other game that has ever existed, in my opinion, because they are a test of your strength, or I guess your reflexes, right? But they are also a test of your mind and your critical thinking skills. And in testing both of those things, you get a very complete sense of fulfillment and achievement. And I think you come away from it with a new sense of personal aspiration. I think I've done some of my best work after getting into Souls games. I know that sounds super corny. It's just a video game. How would it affect you like this? But I mean, look at this helmet that I made, right? I got really into making fiberglass and cosplay, and these things that seemed so challenging and daunting beforehand. I thought, I'm never gonna have my own business making fursuits and stuff. Like like my stuff's not that good. It's not professional enough. Like, how would I ever get to that point where people would pay me thousands of dollars for this kind of stuff? And then I played the Souls games, and I don't know. It just like I was like, yeah, if I can do anything, if I if I just work hard enough on it, I can do anything. And I proceeded to finish getting my engineering degree and start my own business. And the Souls games inspired me to make a bunch of armor, including a full set of Ornstein armor downstairs. And then that transitioned into making fursuits, and that's going great. So, is Dark Souls the reason why any of my life is the way it is right now? I don't know. maybe I just got some rose tinted glasses. But yeah, I think these are games that everybody needs to experience, or at least try to experience. I mean, sure, if you're the kind of person where you just really don't want to have a significant challenge, then fine, I understand. Or maybe the fantasy settings aren't right for you, or some other mechanics bother you. But like, I think 90%, maybe even like 95% of people who like actually got through like Dark Souls 1 to like Sen's Fortress, like either you don't get to Sen's Fortress and then not like it. Like you either quit or you get to Sen's Fortress and then and then by that point you already love the game, and the rest is just going to be like you're over the like kinetic energy hump and you're just writing it down. I think like 95% of people that like got to that point would be like permanent fans. It's just that good. I mean, good stuff is popular for a reason. I used to be like a jaded sort of hipster where anything that was popular, I didn't want to get into it because I'm like, oh, well, that's just what everybody else is into. Like, I don't want to be a normal guy. But, and sure, there are some things that are popular that shouldn't be. But for the most part, if something's really popular, it's probably also really good, especially if it has a cult fan base. And Souls games do definitely have a cult fan base, but it's getting bigger and bigger, especially with the release of Elden Ring. And let's not beat around the bush. Sure, the RPG elements are fantastically integrated into the whole spectrum of games, but the core, the little golden nugget that really makes these games so fun to play is just the way the combat works. And this hasn't changed since 2009. I mean, sure, they've added to it. There's all sorts of, super attacks you can do and charge ups and weird stuff like that. But the basics of, like, the inertia and, like, the movement speed of your character is pretty much unchanged since Demon Souls. The roll mechanic has been there since Demon Souls. And the way shields work and stamina works has been there since Demon Souls. I'm pretty sure parrying has also been there since Demon Souls, and altogether they just seem like regular fantasy combat things, right? Like, of course you're going to block with your shield, of course you're going to hit with your sword, but when you play Skyrim and you're using your shield, how often do you actually use your shield in Skyrim? And how often do you like cheese your shield in Skyrim, right? Or you just hold it up all the time. Personally, I never used shields really in Skyrim. I mean, I may have had one on my character because it looked cool, but the combat wasn't as refined as Dark Souls, and it was overall easier than Dark Souls, so I didn't need a shield. I could just have a big two-handed weapon and just chop through enemies faster than they could kill me. I could just brute force stuff. Anytime you have the ability to just start brute forcing things, it's fun for like 5 minutes, and then it wears off because you're just God in your God video game, or some level of that between mortal human up to God. You're too strong. You need to get turned down a peg. And when you have a shield in Dark Souls, you use the fuck out of it. It's really important. Like, I do a little bit of HEMA and like combat sports, and the significance of your shield or your buckler in that situation is immediately obvious to you, and it feels just as immediately obvious when playing a Souls game, either for blocking or parrying, and you use it sparingly because it has stamina, and not all shields can block everything. Everything's really well balanced. And again, that system has been around since Demon Souls. They haven't really changed it all the way up until today. I think they should add to it. I love that they add all these new things to it. But the base combat system is fantastic. They should never change it, and I don't think they are ever going to change it because it's just too perfect. And to give you an example of why it's so perfect, let me tell you a story about me playing Elden Ring. This was when I had just gotten the game. I had explored all of Limgrave, and I noticed that for some reason I was getting hit randomly with my shield up, and it's just everything seemed a little harder than it needed to be for a while. And then when I fought the first area boss, he kicked my ass over and over again, and I was like, what is going on? Like this, like I'm getting hit when I shouldn't be, and my friends are all watching me on Discord, and they just think that I'm like bad at Souls games, and I'm like, it hasn't been that long. Like why am I like this game can't be that hard? Like did they nerf shields or something? Like what is going on? None of my friends believed me. They just thought I was sucking ass, but I figured it out. It's because my controller, I was using a USB 360 controller, and on the left joystick, there was a teeny tiny dead spot on the back and to the left, like right there. Like if you can do the thing where it shows the dot where your joystick is on screen, if I went all the way around a circle, right there, it would go in like halfway. So what was happening is if I was moving in that specific direction with my shield up, and I rolled past that spot, it would make me like half walk, and my shield would momentarily drop. And that split second thing was killing me over and over and over again. And like that sort of like bug wouldn't really be recognized as bad in Skyrim, for instance. I don't keep dogging on Skyrim, but you know, most other combat games, a tiny little bug like that would not be as bad for you. But once I figured that out, I beat him first time. It's like night and day. And when its system is so finely tuned like that, one little kink in it will cause an issue. And I think this is a big reason why like the difficulty needs to stay whatever, you know, the devs want it to be, whatever they feel like the main experience should be, because they fine-tune the game around that system and work out all the bugs in that system so that it all works super congruently. And the tiniest thing, like, ruins it. I mean, can you imagine if they had nerfed shields and just made it so, like, you couldn't keep your shield up when you were walking backwards? Because that's what I thought was happening. Like, that would have sucked. That would have ruined it. I mean, sure, I know plenty of weirdos that have only played Bloodborne and Sekiro that don't like shields. But me personally, I'm a shield fan. I think they look awesome. They're like big works of art that you get to carry on your character. And, I mean, making shields is one of my favorite things. I have, like, 8 Tarjas and kite shields and all sorts of shit down in the basement. I made the Grass Crest shield. I made the Dragon Crest shield, because the Dragon Crest shield is, like, special to me. You know, that was my Click Souls experience. Shields are great, but, I know, dodging and all that. And don't get me wrong, I love Bloodborne. I haven't played Sekiro, but I mean, let's be real here. I could probably say I love Sekiro even though I haven't played it yet. Like, I'm going to like it. I may as well just go over all the Souls games that I played and how far I've gotten, because I have this bad habit of getting like almost to the end of a Souls game and then just stopping. I actually do it with like a ton of games. It's not because like the final bosses are like too hard or anything. I've done it since I was a kid. It's because I'm like I don't like ending stuff. I don't know. I'm gonna get existential, but I'm like very afraid of death and my own demise. I don't like stories ending, you know. And I just feel like if I leave a game like almost to the end but not totally finished, it's just kind of in stasis, and I can maybe just go back to it sometime and jump right back in the middle where I had a lot of like unfinished stuff that I still wanted to do, but then I never get around to it, and I don't know, it's kind of weird. But Dark Souls 1 I did finish all the way. I got all the way to the end of it. Then I played New Game Plus all the way through, and you know, by that point it had started to finally wear off on me. Again, I can't invest all my time into games. I have a lot of stuff going on, so once the high wears off, I tend to back out pretty quick. But I did attempt a magic build in Dark Souls 1, and it was fun for a while, and then it got really boring because Soul Spear is insane. Then I moved on to Dark Souls 2. I know everybody considers it to be the black sheep, and I certainly did it first. Honestly, one of the biggest complaints that I have of that game, actually, is just, like, the feel. Like, you get what I mean? Like, in Dark Souls 1 and 3 and in Elden Ring 2, like the characters, they're kind of slow moving, but like they have like a weight to them, and your rolls have a weight to them, and it feels like you're actually doing those actions. And it just felt like DS2 was more like when I pressed a button, it just activated an animation that my character did. You know what I mean? I think the jump specifically, if you clicked the stick, you would like lock into a line and jump. You didn't have any freedom in air. You had a lot more freedom with rolls in air and DS1 and 2. It just felt, it wasn't bad, it just felt different. And as far as the game design goes, I thought it was great. There was a lot of new amazing things that they did in DS2. But as far as the content of the game goes, it was there. There was a ton of content. It was just really spread out. Anybody will tell you that DS2 is probably like the longest Souls game other than Elden Ring. And I would agree with that, but only in like scale, not in content. Like it's almost like they took Dark, like all the bosses and characters and the map layout in Dark Souls 1 or something, and they just accordioned it all out so there's more empty space in between. And also with like enemies and bosses and stuff, like say you'd have a boss in DS1 that has like 6 different attacks. Well, in DS2 instead you get 2 bosses that each have 3 attacks that would have been all together with one boss in DS1. Again, it's not like a bad thing, it was just like different, but it did make some of the boss fights, especially like towards the end of the game when you're kind of overpowered, it was just like, oh, this guy, he does one swing like this and then he walks forward and that's all he does, and it's pretty easy to figure out, but still an enjoyable experience. I'm a sucker for lava levels and am keep that's my ex the Iron Keep. When you go up the elevator into the lava area, that is like my favorite lava area in like any Souls game. And it's really weird because you go up an elevator and then you're like in a volcano. Like you didn't go side. It's like the Willy Wonka elevator that goes like all different directions. I don't know how that works, but I like it because I like it when games do weird geometry stuff that's like non-Euclidean, even if it isn't on purpose. And DS3 is actually my favorite because it feels just like DS1, but like better. Like the characters have the weight I'm talking about. Everything feels like good and chunky, and the movements are very smooth, and you feel like you have complete control. It's just like better in every way. Like I went back to it on my PC a couple months ago, and I was like, oh yeah, this is better than DS1. And I think I got my only ever first time fighting a boss, not getting hit and killing it, that like I'd ever done in a Souls game, at least for like a main boss. High Lord Wolnir, the really big skeleton in the catacombs. I remember getting all the way through the catacombs and being on like 1 Estus or something, and deciding if I wanted to go further or try to double back and get some levels. But I pushed forward. There's a boss. I'm like, oh, this is not going to go well. And I don't know how I did it, but I didn't get hit once. Crazy, right? And as cool as that was, it wasn't as fulfilling as like beating Quelaag, for instance, because I feel like I had bested the game. This challenging Dark Souls game, I feel like I'd figured it out and done something to beat the boss and succeeded, whereas with Wolnir, I just kind of felt like I got lucky. Not saying that DS3 isn't an amazing game, I'm just kind of comparing like the ways that you can feel good when fighting a boss. But yeah, DS2, I got like 95% of the way through and then stopped. Actually, I think I did finish it because it has kind of an anticlimactic regular ending. But the DLC, I didn't get all the way through the DLC, and that wasn't because it was hard. I think it was just because I got lost with the giants. You have to go into multiple places, and I couldn't find them. By that point, I was getting too busy. So that's not the game's fault. That's my fault. And DS3, I also did the same thing. I got like almost to the end and then just stopped. But it's not because I'm bad at the Souls games. I'm busy. And my current partner, Dexter, finally got me to play Bloodborne, which, I knew I was going to like it. I wasn't avoiding it for any particular reason other than I didn't have a PS4. But we have one now. I'm about halfway through the game. I just killed the big old spider. Rom. Yeah, get to do with all the holes in them. That was fun. I am enjoying Bloodborne. It was a bit of a change not having a shield. I mean, I know how to roll. I know how to dodge. I knew the game was going to be a little bit different. But they didn't have to rub it in my face. Because you do get a shield in Bloodborne. It just sucks. It even says it sucks in the item description. It's like, oh yeah, only plebs use shields, and it's this little crappy wooden thing. I was like, well, I'll try to have it as my sub weapon anyways. It's useless. It's completely useless. I mean, I appreciate it. It's funny. I'm still getting through the game just fine, but I mean, you're the one that put shields in the other games. Have still yet to play Sekiro, but it's absolutely on my list. And obviously I can't forget about the great-grandfather. Well, great-grandfather would be Kingsfield. The grandfather, or daddy, which is Demon Souls. I think I played Demon Souls after finishing 3, and I had an amazing time with it, but I also did the same thing where I got like almost to the end and then stopped playing. But experienced most of what these games have to offer. Demon Souls might actually... It's tied with 3, or it's tied with 1. I don't know, 3 is the best, and 1 and Demon Souls are tied very closely together. Because Demon Souls has, like... Demon Souls feels like a 2000s game, if you know what I mean. Like, imagine the aesthetic of the PlayStation 2 loading screen. You know, it's all like... The 90s had a thing. We can all think back to the 90s and we know what, like, the 90s is. Like, the Jazz Cup, like, personified. And then, like, the 2000s, I think, is, like, vector art and, like, bell-bottom fat pants and, like, really cool graffiti and, like, weird techie things with, like, round edges and stuff. And Demon Souls, I know it's a fantasy game, it's got knights in it, but like it has that feel to it, especially with the menu music. The original menu music of Demon Souls is mwah. Like, when I die, I want people to play that song at my funeral because it's like both somber but also like very relaxing. Like, it feels like it's sad, but like not in a sad way. I don't know how to explain it. It's great though. And all the other tracks in the game are great, but they're all made with like really crappy MIDI horns, but like it has so much charm to it. And the like shaders in the game are like, you know, like Fallout 3 and like Oblivion and like the bloom and how like kind of just gross everything looked in the 2000s. Like, it looks like that. It looks like a 2000s game, but it has that charm. And then Dark Souls is like Demon Souls, but like the new generation, and they, you know, they improved on everything and they just made it so much better. And we have a PS5, so I got to play the amazing Demon Souls remake. And I'm gonna be honest, the remake feels like it's a tiny bit harder than the original. I don't know if that's because of like the frame rate, or it's like the frame rate or the way the characters move. I feel like your movements are just a little bit too slow. I mean, I'm still getting through it just fine. I got all through Tower of Latria. It's like my favorite area. Oh my god. I'd say I'm about halfway through the remake, but so far it's amazing. I mean, everything that they did with the graphics is just like perfect. I will say, if you want it to feel a little more retro, you can go into the filter settings and put on like a more dynamic, colorful filter. I think the one that's called Classic is what I use, and it just makes everything pop a little more and makes it all a little more colorful, because modern games tend to like to you know, make everything more grayscale and kind of sepia to make it feel more rugged. But you know, this is dark fantasy. These are supposed to be gritty games, but they still, like, the colors need to pop, especially with Demon Souls, because it's a 2000s game. And from my experience, they didn't change anything about the mechanics of the game other than the frame rate. Again, little tiny issue with the perfect system becomes noticeable. So something tiny like that is just making the combat like the littlest bit different. It's not like that bad, but I do notice it. But beyond that, they just made everything look absolutely gorgeous. They did redesign some of the characters. I know people kind of got mad about that, but for the most part, like everything like looks the way that I would have imagined it. I know some people were getting mad that they like added a lot of stuff to just like the scenery, like where in the original it was just some rectangular gothic building with a bunch of rubble and stuff around it, and then in the remake they add like these buttresses out on the side and some like ornate things and stuff, and people are like, well, it's supposed to be dark gothic, it's supposed to be all gritty, and it's not supposed to be like fantasy and all fancy fantasy. But let's be real. If you're working with an engine that can make billions of polygons, you're gonna use it, because if you have a billion polygons that's just used to make a rectangular, boring castle, it's gonna look boring. I think the art direction for the remake is fantastic. Latria was my litmus test for that, because I know how eldritch and how oppressive Latria is supposed to feel, and they absolutely nailed it. Like, the second you show up in that jail cell, it's like, oh yeah, this is it. This is the way I remember it. This is fantastic. And I'm not blinded by, like, nostalgia goggles, because, I played DS1 in, like, 2018, and then I played all the other games through, like, 2020. So, it hasn't been that long for me, and I remember it being exactly like the remake. So I think they nailed it. The only thing that I personally don't like about it is the soundtrack, because again, the old soundtrack is super retro and super 2000s feeling, but you can't expect a company to like make a game that has a feel from the era it's in, because we're not in that era anymore. And even if they did achieve it in some way, it would probably feel kind of forced. So I'm okay with them redoing the score. I mean, the original score is still on YouTube, and if you want to play the original Demon Souls, you can. Although it would maybe be cool to have an option to have like original music in it, or maybe they do, and I just haven't gotten to the end to unlock that yet. I'm not sure. But listen to the original soundtrack; it's very good. So I've done a lot of word vomit in this video. I've done a lot of rambling. I'm sorry if you were clicking on this video expecting something a little more well-produced. Well, my channel doesn't have that many subs, and I make like armor and stuff, not videos. But I don't know. I just wanted to fawn over my favorite game series. My favorite game series that I didn't even know I was missing. I mean, you know what they say about love, right? It's like, you'll be on Tinder, or you'll be out going to bars trying to meet new people and trying to find love, and you can't find anybody, and then like the second you stop, that's when someone finds you. That's happened to me in my life personally with several people I've dated, but it also happened to this fucking game. Like, I didn't like it the first time I played it. I wasn't interested, but when I wasn't looking for a new game to play, I mean, I was like busy in college, and my ex was just like, no, you gotta try it. You gotta give it a go. And then when I least expected it, I didn't even know what I was missing out on. And yeah, now it's like I'm not gonna say it defines me, but I mean, it's a huge part of my life, man. The series is great. I mean, out of all the things that you could make your whole life, make a big part of your life about, people choose all sorts of stuff, Sonic the Hedgehog, or I don't know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all sorts of movies, Marvel, Capcom, whatever. I mean, this is my thing, and I feel no shame in fanboying over a series like this, and dressing up in cosplay, and spending a bunch of money on materials to make stuff, and money to go to cons and stay in hotels just to wear this armor for people to look at for a couple seconds. I don't mind it. I love it. It's great, because the amount of effort that I put into this series and the amount of love that I have for it is definitely matched by the people who make these games. They love it probably more than any of us do, because they're the ones making it, and they keep making these awesome games and putting their heart and souls into it, so we put our hearts and souls into it as well. Little souls pun there. Did you like that? So I'm going to end this video talking about my most magical boss fight I ever had in a Souls game, and it was with Black Dragon Calameets from the DS1 expansion. If you guys remember, he was an optional boss. I think he has more health and is generally regarded as a little bit harder than Manus, but my fight with him was in the sweet spot we talked about. I think I took maybe 20 tries to kill him, and that was just enough to get me riled up to try new things, to work on my strategy, but not enough to where I got really frustrated and was wasting my time and had to like set it down and try again the next day. It was just, okay, this is challenging, but I can do this. I know this is like one of the hardest dudes in the game. I can do this. And around the 20th fight, it was epic. It was amazing. I mean, like, it felt like in the movies when you see like a knight fighting a dragon, barely dodging flames and hiding behind rocks and just barely escaping getting blown up or maimed over and over and over again and coming out victorious. And you watch movies like that and you're like, well, that could never happen in real life, because like the amount of luck you'd have to be able to escape all this stuff. It's like it's the main character plot armor, right? But like, you get the main character plot armor in a Souls game in the attempt where you actually win, because then you get really good, and then also everything kind of goes right for you, and then you come out of it feeling like the main character, which like you should feel by this point. I mean, he has that attack where he flies up in the air and blows that like plague cloud down, and they perfectly tweaked it where they give you just enough time if you sprint to like just like book it out as the smoke is coming at you, and then turn around and book it back while you're dodging his lasers and stuff, and get right between his legs and just go crazy, and then run out again, and just you can see how like this is amazing. I've never played any other games that can make my butt clench so hard but can make me feel like a fucking legend, okay? If you play Halo and you're the Master Chief and everybody tells you how cool you are, okay, that's great, but like, that's not me, that's the Master Chief. I'm just filling in his shoes. You know, if I play Doom guy, well, I'm just filling in his shoes. He's the one ripping up all the demons, but when you beat a Souls game, you take down a boss, you did it. The game did not bend the knee for you. You forced it to the ground, and it's awesome. And when you hit the sweet spot and you do it and it looks really cool, oh, it's so good. And I wish I had gotten that fight on video, because I just trust me, it was amazing. I know you guys aren't going to believe me, but it was the coolest thing ever. And I'm sure all of you have stories like this too, that you wish you could have shown people. I mean, the streamers really get lucky because they just play long enough, and eventually there's going to be some really epic moments that they can capture. And, you know, that's why, like, Soul streamers are so popular, because these games are really, really fun to watch too. It's like watching a boxing match, because you're not just watching someone breeze through the game. Like you know they're going to get their shit pushed in. Like, you know every fight's going to be, like, actually interesting, and the stakes are actually pretty high. I absolutely love watching people play Souls, especially new people, because you get to see the gears turn in their head. You get to see them solve puzzles and in ways that maybe you didn't before, and you want to try and help them so bad, but you want to help them enough where they don't get mad at the game, but you don't want to give them too much, because there's that magic that will be lost if you spill too many beans, you know. And I guess that's how I want to end the video, is by talking about how to get other people into these games. I'm like, you could say I'm like a Jehovah's Witness, but for Souls games. I mean, it is a cult. People say we're like, Souls fans are like a cult. Yeah, we are. But some cults are pretty fucking cool. So, we need more members to summon our Lord and Savior Solaire from the depths of hollow purgatory. So, how? This is what I'm asking you guys, if anybody even watches this video. How do you get other people into Souls games? Because the media is certainly not doing it. I mean, sure, they advertise their games on TV, but most of the journal articles just like hate Souls games, or they just compare hard games to Souls games, and have just perpetuated this really bad rap, and where just nobody wants to play Dark Souls. I mean, plenty of people like Elden Ring. Elden Ring has gotten way further than Dark Souls, but I still know a ton of people that only play Elden Ring, and they're like, oh, I don't want to play Dark Souls. Dark Souls is like hard, and the community's bad and stuff. And it's like it's just like Elden Ring, man. It's like you're good at Elden Ring, it'll transfer right over to Dark Souls, I promise, and you'll have tons of fun with it. It seems really, really hard to get people to take that step. So how do you guys do it? Because it's like having your 5-year-old play like t-ball, like softball or something, and they really suck at it, and they keep getting like balls thrown in their face, and they're like crying, and you're like a parent on the sideline, just like, come on, just catch the ball. Like, you're yelling at them, but you don't want to like make them sad and cry more, but you're like just trying to get it through their head, like, you just gotta catch the ball and it'll be fine, you won't have to cry anymore, but you're making it worse. That's how I feel trying to get people into Souls games. I don't want to ruin it for them or help them too much, and I also don't want to backseat them, because some people absolutely hate that. My partner absolutely hates that. So when I got them to play Souls for the first time and they were on the Capra Demon, I'm just like, they're screaming and I'm sitting here like, hey, so there's one thing, like, just trying to just think of like the most important thing I could say to them that would help them most and just get it out. But there's like, these games have a way of pissing off new players. I get it, but how do we counteract that? Like, do you just let baby fall down over and over again and keep hitting their head and keep crying and like until they figure it out? Or do you try to help and maybe give them some pointers to start out? Because, you know, my ex didn't tell me the right things with kindling bonfires, and that really screwed me over, and I had a way harder time. So I mean, I think maybe like game mechanics like that, you should tell them, but not necessarily how to play the game. It's a hard line, because it's like, you can tell people how shields are and what they do and how effective they are, but someone might not even want to use a shield, you know? You can tell them about magic, but they might not want to do magic. It's just, yeah, it's hard. For an RPG where you can do whatever you want, it's hard to tell people a way to play the game, but sometimes they need that help. I mean, it probably depends on the person. I've had some people that they got through the Asylum Demon, they got through most of Blighttown, and then the Tourist Demon. It's usually the Tourist Demon where people quit, because the trek there's pretty long. I get it, there's enemies the whole way there, and there's the dude with the barrel, but they like, the Tourist Demon's pretty easy, actually, and you can get down like half his health if you go up and kill the dudes on the thing, and people don't even know to check around the corner unless you tell them. But it's like, do you tell them or do you not? Because having the dude shooting arrows is really annoying. It's hard. It's so hard, but I want everybody I can to enjoy this game. I've had people that gave up there, and I could just tell that, you know what, this isn't going to work. I'll just stop, and maybe they'll come back to it someday, like I did. And then there's my partner, where I got the right intuition, because I would try to give them pointers, and they'd be like, no, fuck you, stop talking, I'm going to do this myself. And I'm just like, okay, you know. And they threatened multiple times, fighting the Capra Demon, fighting the Gargs they got through. Like, it was mostly Capra, but multiple times that they were just gonna uninstall the game. They're like, fuck this, I hate this, I'm gonna uninstall it. And I'm like, no, please, listen, you can stop playing for now, but just please, just don't uninstall it, because you have your save, you're gonna get rid of your, just calm down, it's okay. I'm like trying to disarm a bomb here, and like in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like they might be done, but maybe not. And sure enough, my partner's this kind of person. Without me even doing anything else the next day, I'm like, hey, what's up? And they're like, I'm playing Dark Souls again. It's like, oh, you are? You're doing it again, even though you wanted to delete it last night. I'm like, yeah. Like, they got hooked by that point. They really, really wanted to push through it. So maybe it depends on the person. I don't know. I'd say my partner was a successful inauguration into our cult. But yeah, just spread the word, if the word even needs spread. Anybody who's played Elden Ring, tell them to play the other Souls games. Any of them. They're all good. Alright. That was a long video. I should probably get back to working on commissions now. I think I've gotten the urge to talk about my favorite franchise out of my system. Thank you for listening to me ramble on for however long this is going to be, an hour and a half or something. I can't tell you that my video quality is going to improve in the future because I'm probably not going to make any other videos like this in the future. Probably not even going to buy a new webcam. Yeah, have a great day. Enjoy yourself. Play some video games. Play some Dark Souls. Bye bye.